The first time I saw Hani Yang, he was standing alone in the rain, holding an umbrella he wasn't using. I remember thinking that was strange. Most people run from the rain. He just stood there, letting it fall on his shoulders, staring at nothing, like the world outside had stopped mattering to him a long time ago. My name is Lin Chen. That autumn, I was 26 years old, and I had just moved into apartment 4B, right across the hall from apartment 4A, his apartment. I didn't know his name yet. I only knew that every morning, at exactly 7:15, I would hear his door close softly, and every evening, at exactly 9 o'clock, I would hear it open again. Never earlier, never later. As if his whole life had been measured out with a ruler. I was curious about him from the very first day. Not because he was unfriendly. He wasn't rude, not once, but because he seemed to be made of glass. Careful, distant. Like if you got too close, something inside him might crack. We didn't speak for almost 2 weeks. Just small nods in the hallway. A quiet, good morning, that he answered with only a tilt of his head. I told myself it didn't matter. I had my own life, a new job at a small architecture firm, new city, new streets to learn. I didn't need a mysterious neighbor to think about. But I thought about him anyway. The night everything changed was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were trash collection days, and I was carrying 2 heavy bags down the stairwell when I heard it. A sound like glass breaking, followed by silence, followed by nothing at all. I knocked on his door. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time, my heart beating strangely fast for someone I barely knew. "Are you okay in there?" I called out. Still nothing. I don't know what made me try the handle. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the kind of worry you can't explain with logic. The door was unlocked, and when I stepped inside, I found him sitting on the kitchen floor, surrounded by broken glass, his hand pressed against his palm, blood slipping quietly between his fingers. He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than distance in his eyes. I saw pain. Real, raw pain, the kind that isn't about a cut on your hand. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice shook. I didn't listen to him. I found a clean towel, knelt down beside him, and wrapped it gently around his hand. "You're not fine," I said. "But that's okay. Nobody has to be fine all the time." He stared at me like I had said something impossible, like no one had ever told him that before. We sat on that kitchen floor for almost an hour. He didn't explain what happened, not that night, and I didn't ask. I just stayed, because something told me that was what he needed more than words. When the bleeding stopped, he finally spoke. "Thank you," he whispered. "I'm Hani Yang. Lin Chun," I said, smiling. "Your neighbor. The one who's been trying to say more than good morning to you for 2 weeks." For the briefest moment, so brief I almost missed it, the corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but close enough to make my chest feel strangely warm. That was the beginning, though I didn't know it yet. Over the following weeks, I learned small things about him the way you learn the shape of a new city, slowly, one street at a time. He worked at a hospital, which explained the exhaustion always hiding behind his eyes. He didn't like sweet food, but he always kept a jar of honey candy in his coat pocket for the children on the ward, he told me once, almost embarrassed to admit it. He hummed old songs when he thought no one was listening. And every single night, without fail, he stood by the window in his apartment for exactly 10 minutes before turning off the light, looking out at the street lamp on the corner like it held an answer to a question he never asked out loud. I started leaving my door open a little, just enough to hear him come home. I started making extra tea, just in case he knocked. I told myself it was simple kindness. Neighbors helping neighbors. But deep down, some quiet part of me already knew it was becoming something more. One evening, I found him standing in the hallway again, that same unopened umbrella in his hand, even though it wasn't raining. "You always carry that," I said, nodding toward it. "Even on dry days." He looked down at it like he'd forgotten it was there. "It was my brother's," he said quietly. "He used to say that carrying an umbrella means you're prepared for anything, even the things you don't expect." "Where is he now?" I asked gently. "Your brother?" Hani Yang's face changed in an instant. The glass I'd sensed in him from the very beginning finally showing its first true crack. "He's not here anymore," he said. "He hasn't been here for 3 years." I understood then, without needing him to say the word. I understood why he stood in the rain without using his umbrella. I understood the careful way he closed his door every morning at exactly the same time, like keeping a promise to someone who could no longer see him keep it. I wanted to say something comforting. something wise. But nothing felt big enough for the sadness in his eyes. So instead, I just reached out and took the umbrella gently from his hand. Then let's use it together, I said. Just this once. So it's not just a memory. So it becomes something new, too. He looked at me for a long moment, like he was deciding whether to trust this strange neighbor who had barged into his life with towels and tea and a stubborn refusal to let him carry his pain alone. Then, slowly, he nodded. We stepped outside into the light evening drizzle, the umbrella open above us, our shoulders close enough to touch. Neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. The sound of rain on the umbrella was enough, steady, soft, like a heartbeat neither of us wanted to admit we were listening to. That night, as he said goodnight and disappeared behind his door, I stood alone in the hallway for a long time, my heart doing something it hadn't done in years. I didn't know yet how complicated this was going to become. I didn't know that Han Yang was carrying a promise he believed he could never break, a promise that would soon stand directly between us. All I knew was that something inside that quiet, careful man had reached toward me for the very first time, and I was terrified of how badly I wanted to reach back. Winter came slowly that year, the way it always seems to in the city. First as a chill in the morning air, then as a heaviness in the sky, until one day you wake up and the whole world is gray and cold and somehow more honest than it was before. Han Yang and I had become something neither of us had a name for. Not quite friends, not quite anything else. Just two people who had started leaving their doors unlocked for each other, who shared dinners on Thursday nights because Thursdays were his only evenings off, who had somehow built a small, quiet world in the space between apartment 4A and 4B. I looked forward to those Thursdays more than I wanted to admit. He would come home still smelling faintly of antiseptic, his shoulders heavy with a day of other people's pain, and I would have tea ready, sometimes soup if the weather was especially cold. We would sit at my small kitchen table, and he would talk, not about anything important, usually. A funny patient, a nurse who kept trying to set him up with her cousin, the stray cat that lived behind the hospital that he secretly fed every day. But some nights, the conversation went deeper. And on those nights, I learned the truth about the umbrella, one piece at a time. His brother's name had been Han Cheng. Older by 2 years, he had been, according to Yang, the version of me that knew how to be happy. Cheng had loved rain, loved music, loved life with a kind of reckless joy that Yang admired and never quite understood. They had been close, closer than most brothers, until an accident on a rainy night took Cheng away and left Yang carrying a single unopened umbrella and a guilt he had never told anyone about. I was supposed to pick him up that night. Yang told me one Thursday, his hands wrapped tightly around a teacup he wasn't drinking from. He called me, asked me to come get him from the train station because it was raining hard. I told him I was busy. I told him to just take a taxi. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. The taxi never came, he continued. He waited too long. He tried to walk. And on the way, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I reached across the table and took his hand, not to comfort him with words, because I knew, by then, that words weren't always what he needed. Just to let him know I was there. That he wasn't carrying it alone in that moment, even if he still felt like he had to carry it alone in every other moment of his life. It wasn't your fault, I said quietly. I know that, he answered. Here. He touched his head. But not here. He touched his chest. I understood that too well. Grief doesn't listen to logic. It settles into the body like weather, and no amount of reasoning can talk it out of staying. After that night, something between us shifted. He started reaching for my hand without needing an excuse. He started staying past 10 o'clock, past the strict schedule he had built his whole life around, as if being with me had finally become more important than the rules he used to survive his sadness. One evening in early December, we walked to a small night market near our building, the kind with strings of warm lights hanging over food stalls and the smell of roasted chestnuts filling the cold air. Yang bought 2 cups of hot sweet rice wine, even though he claimed not to like sweet things, and handed one to me with a small, shy smile that made my chest ache in the best possible way. You smile more now, I told him, watching the lights reflect in his eyes. Have you noticed? He looked down at his cup, embarrassed. Maybe it's your fault. I'll take the blame, I said, laughing. Happily. I don't know what I want anymore, he admitted. I only know what I'm supposed to do. That night, for the first time since we'd met, Yang didn't come to my door. I stood by my window instead, watching the street lamp on the corner, understanding, for the very first time, exactly what he must feel every night, staring at that same small light, wondering how something so distant could still hurt so much to look at. Days passed in careful, painful politeness. We still said good morning. We still shared quiet nods in the hallway. But the warmth that had grown so naturally between us seemed to freeze over, replaced by something neither of us wanted, but neither of us knew how to stop. Then, 3 days before he was supposed to leave for his family's home, Yang knocked on my door late at night. His umbrella, his brother's umbrella, held tightly in his hand, even though the sky outside was clear and full of stars. "I don't know how to do this," he said, his voice breaking in a way I had never heard before. "I don't know how to choose between the family I have left and the person who made me feel alive again." I stepped closer to him, my heart pounding. "Then don't choose yet," I said softly. "Just tell me the truth. Right now? No duty, no family, no promises. Just you and me, standing here. What do you want, Yang?" He looked at me for a long, long moment, the umbrella trembling slightly in his grip. "I want you," he finally whispered. "I've wanted you since the night you knelt beside me on that kitchen floor and told me I didn't have to be fine all the time." The words hit me like warm rain after a long drought. But before I could answer, before I could close the distance between us that had been building for months, his phone rang. His mother, calling again, her name lighting up the screen like an unavoidable reminder of everything waiting for him at home. Yang looked down at the phone, then back up at me, torn in a way that broke my heart to witness. "I have to go," he said. "Not because I want to, because I promised." And with that, he turned and walked back into apartment 4A, leaving me standing alone in the hallway, the sound of his closing door echoing louder than it ever had before. The week Yang was gone felt longer than any week I had lived through in years. I told myself I understood. Family, duty, grief. These were things I couldn't compete with, and honestly, I never wanted to compete with them. I just wanted him to be happy, even if that happiness didn't include me. But telling myself that and believing it were two very different things, and every night, when I passed apartment 4A and saw its dark, silent windows, something in my chest twisted tighter. I busied myself with work. I redesigned 3 floor plans I didn't need to redesign. I reorganized my bookshelves twice. I made tea every evening out of habit, then poured it down the drain because drinking alone at that small kitchen table felt unbearably empty. On the 7th night, it started raining. The first heavy rain since the night we'd first shared his umbrella. I don't know what made me go downstairs. Maybe it was restlessness. Maybe it was some quiet hope I didn't want to admit to myself. But I found myself standing outside our building, coatless, letting the rain fall over me the way I'd once seen Yang do on the very first day we met. That's when I saw him. He was walking up the street, no umbrella in his hand this time, his suitcase rolling behind him, his hair already soaked through. When he saw me standing there, he stopped completely, as if his feet had simply forgotten how to move. "Yang," I said, my voice barely audible over the rain. He dropped the handle of his suitcase and crossed the distance between us in a few quick steps. "I couldn't do it," he said, breathless. I sat across from her at that dinner table, and all I could think about was you. I kept thinking about tea on Thursday nights, and the night market, and the way you held my hand like it was something worth holding. I realized I've spent 3 years honoring my brother by refusing to let myself be happy. And I don't think that's what he would have wanted. I think he would have wanted me to open the umbrella, not just carry it. Rain streamed down both our faces, mixing with something warmer in my eyes that I didn't try to hide. "What about your mother?" I asked. "What about the promise?" "I told her the truth," Yang said. "I told her I couldn't build my life around someone else's expectations anymore, not even hers. I told her about you. Not everything, not yet, but enough." She didn't understand right away. Maybe she never will completely. But she said something before I left that I don't think I'll ever forget. What did she say? She said grief makes us hold on too tightly to the wrong things sometimes, and that I Ching would never have wanted his umbrella to become a cage instead of a shelter. I felt my throat tighten with emotion I couldn't fully put into words. "I came back because I want to try," Yang continued, stepping closer. Close enough now that I could see every raindrop caught in his eyelashes. "I don't know exactly what this is between us, or where it's going, or how complicated it might get. But I know I don't want to keep standing outside my own life anymore. watching other people be brave enough to live it. I want to be brave too. With you. I didn't answer with words. Instead, I reached out and took his hand, the way I had that night at the night market, lacing our fingers together like something that had always belonged that way. Then let's be brave together, I said. Starting now. He smiled. A real smile this time, wide and unguarded, the kind I imagined he hadn't allowed himself in years. And in that smile, I saw not just the quiet, careful man I had fallen for over these past months, but the boy his brother must have loved so much, the one who used to run through the rain without fear. We stood there together for a long while, neither of us in any hurry to go inside, the rain falling steadily around us like it had been waiting all this time to witness this exact moment. Later, when we finally climbed the stairs to our floor, soaked and laughing quietly at how ridiculous we must have looked, Yang paused in front of his apartment door. He reached into his bag and pulled out the umbrella, his brother's umbrella, turning it over gently in his hands. I think it's time I actually use this, he said. Not just carry it. He opened it right there in the hallway, a small, soft laugh escaping him, the kind of sound I hadn't heard from him before, light and unburdened. Come inside, he said, holding the door open. I'll make the tea this time. I followed him in, my heart fuller than it had been in a long time, watching as he set the umbrella by the door, not hidden away in a closet like a wound he was protecting, but standing open near the window, where the last of the street lamp's light could reach it. Some promises, I realized that night, aren't about holding on to what we've lost. They're about carrying forward the love that person gave us, and finding the courage to let it grow into something new. Months passed. Thursdays became every day. Apartment 4A and 4B slowly became just one home, shared between two people who had learned that healing doesn't erase the past. It simply teaches you how to walk forward while still honoring it. And every time it rained, Han Yang and I would step outside together, sharing that same umbrella, no longer a reminder of what he had lost, but a symbol of everything he had finally allowed himself to find. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and subscribe for more slow burn love stories like this one. I'd love to know, what was your favorite moment between Lin Chen and Han Yang? Was it the umbrella in the rain, the night market, or the ending? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next story.